Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Back from the Sewers, brought to us by Konami. The second of what would be 3 TMNT games on the Nintendo Gameboy, and this one is definitely a favorite amongst many. For this run of the game, I will be playing on the hard difficulty setting. As we begin, I'm going to go right to the menu, and then as I come out of it, show the game intro, because you have to see it both times after coming out of the menu. So, switch over to the hard difficulty, and then we're going to drop on down to exit, and enjoy the little intro, very much mimicking the cartoon, as this game's whole kind of aesthetic was mimicking the cartoon. After watching that fun intro, we're back at the main menu. I'm going to go into the game now. Before each one of the levels, you're able to select which of the turtles you want to play as. Raphael is my favorite, and I'll be starting with Raphael, but I'll play as every turtle as we go throughout the game. There's not a whole lot of difference. Leonardo and Michelangelo are pretty much identical. Raphael is a bit faster, but he has a shorter range, where Donatello is a bit slower and has a bit longer of a range. However, the best thing that we're going to be doing, at least through most of the game, is this wonderful slide maneuver. This allows you to cover a bit of distance as well as actually move a bit quicker, I think, than just straight up walking. Plus, it just looks hilarious and is fun to do. The game is set up structurally very similar to Fall of the Foot Clan, the first of the TMNT games on the Game Boy, with enemies coming at you from both the left and right sides, kind of slowly making your way through it. It's very much similar to the classic Kung Fu on the NES. Depending on the difficulty, you have more enemies, as well as I think the bosses actually become more powerful, even dealing some different moves, I think, on the harder difficulty settings. Thankfully though, there's still plenty of health to pick up all throughout the game. Lots of different foot soldiers that will have giant full pizzas that they're carrying, and defeating them will allow you to get one of those pizzas to bring your health back up. Also, if you don't lose all your health and have a turtle captured, when you beat a level, you get a bonus game where you potentially can get some of your health back that way as well. However, if you do lose all your health and the turtle is thus captured, you do get an opportunity to rescue the turtle between levels instead. The first level, is to be expected, isn't going to provide too much of a challenge. It's mostly just knowing when you do need to turn around to deal with the foot soldiers coming up from behind. A few foot soldiers you can kind of jump over and avoid having to deal with, but the slide is so efficient, it's just easier to keep going on your butt and keep sliding along the ground. Sometimes pulling off the slide and just doing moves in general, I may accidentally jump in the air. There are a few instances, like for example with these bomber guys, to jump over and try to do a flying kick into them or just avoid them altogether, because after they throw those bombs, they will then go off screen themselves. Here we're going to take the top path, and if you move quickly, you can actually get the one Foot Clan soldier to go back into the sewer without really even doing anything else. It pops out, sees nothing's going on, you're sliding over top, it just goes back into the sewer. Thankfully, right at the end here, you're able to bulldoze through a lot of enemies quickly, because even if you get hit, there's a health replenishment at the end of this set, so very useful to know that. Once down into the next segment of level 1, you kind of have this bomb go off, blowing open a big hole in the ground. You want to make sure that you jump up in the air and use the pipe above. When you're hanging on to anything in the game, you can attack and do a kick to deal with enemies that way, though it's more efficient to get back onto the ground as soon as possible because you'll be quicker more than likely. These guys, I'm just going to jump over. I think you could potentially kick them or hit them at the same time, but they're more likely going to end up damaging you, so it's just not worth doing. Just jump over them to avoid. As we reach here, we have a series of foot soldiers coming in from both the left and right side. Just stay wherever you like, wherever you feel more comfortable, and just to keep attacking them on both the left and right until they're all dealt with. After that, we pop out back to the main street. Splinter is there from the window to give us another pizza, so you can see plenty of chances once again to get full health. The boss fights in this game are a little awkward and sometimes hard to avoid taking damage. With Rocksteady, you have some objects being dropped down on top of you from the foot soldiers in the window. Stay away from Rocksteady. You can do the slide, as it's a pretty decent amount of space between you and him that you're able to hit with that slide, and thus get away sometimes before he's able to initiate attacks of his own. If you time it right by sliding when the projectile is being dropped from the foot soldier, you can negate whatever it would do to you and land a hit on Rocksteady. He's not going to move while that object's coming down, and you're able to sometimes get 2 or 3 hits in. Since the bosses all have invincibility frames, a lot of the fights, it's just knowing how to hit them, get away so they don't end up damaging you, and then when that invincibility frame does go up, you have the opportunity to deliver more damage. For this bonus game, and for most of them, you're going to be just collecting pizzas, just in a variety of ways. For this one, you have pipes that are kind of hanging around. You'll have to slide underneath between the pipes in order to go after the pizzas. The more you collect, the more health you end up earning back, as well as some points. For level number 2, we're going to change over now to Donatello. You'll notice his attack is longer range than Raphael, and because it comes out a bit slower, but it's really not a whole lot of difference. For this level, you get to ride on this fun board while dealing with enemies, something that we've done a lot in TMNT games over the years. For the helicopter guys, you can do a jump kind of kick into them from below and just avoid taking kind of any real damage from them. If you are dealing with them head-on, they can fire at the ground, and even if you're in the air, they can end up hitting you with the gun, which is just annoying, but don't worry. As long as you only take a few hits of damage, you should be able to last the onslaught so that you can end up making it through this area. These fast-moving foot soldiers will go to the left or right side and then throw a boomerang out at you and then immediately go off screen, so you don't have to worry really about fighting them. If the boomerang's coming your way, you can actually deflect it with your own attack. Near the end of the area here, we have this vehicle shows up dropping barrels. Just do some simple jumps over the barrels, nothing too difficult to avoid them for sure. Thankfully, the few other enemies we deal with here are very easy, just coming straight towards us, and a simple attack will deal with them. After the barrels, you then have another gauntlet of the foot soldiers and a few other enemies coming at you, but still, really nothing too challenging for sure. Right after this, though, we're going to be going right into the boss battle. Stage 2 ends up being pretty short in comparison to the 4-segment stage that we dealt with in level number 1. As we reach the end, we'll jump off of our board and begin the battle with Bebop. Bebop likes to go like a line down the left or right side of the screen, firing at multiple bullets at the same time. Then likes to kind of track you down, hitting Bebop and then getting away so that you have enough range. Even using Donatello with the longer range sometimes can be a little bit difficult. When he's on the left or right side, just going up and down, that part's easy, but it's the part where he tries to track you down and just homes in on you, trying to do those uppercuts, that it sometimes can be difficult to keep enough space between you and him to deliver damage, while also not taking some of your own. So sometimes when I get kind of caught up on him, I just keep attacking to get him out of that attacks pattern and go back to going up the walls. Here we have another one of the bonus games, collecting pizzas, dealing with these spikes that will slow you down as you're trying to gather them. The rescue game that I won't be showing since I don't lose a turtle is actually pretty difficult. It's more difficult depending on which difficulty you're playing on, but it's basically a boss fight. You have a time limit and this robot guard that you have to deal with. The best strategy for that, though, a lot of it is jumping and avoiding as much of the projectiles as you can, delivering kicks, and then quickly getting away so you're not getting hit by it and thus being slowed down. It's actually a pretty difficult fight to actually do on the hard mode and actually get any of your turtles back that way. Act number 3 here, we're going to take the role of Michelangelo, a bunch of foot soldiers to start us off. Taking the upper path, we can avoid most of them as they will keep going back and forth on the bottom part of the screen. Do a big jump over any of the bomb-throwing foot soldiers that try to hit you with any of their projectiles. Just like we've been doing, the slide is very efficient for kind of getting past the area as quickly as we can. Eventually, though, we'll come to kind of a flat back wall, and then a bunch of stuff will start falling. Watch out for the buckets as they come crashing down on you. You can destroy them with a nicely timed attack. Right after that, we're introduced to the Mousers. These Mousers are very annoying, mostly because they will keep coming at you. It starts off with just a few, so we can kind of get used to dealing with them. But they become relentless because of the hard difficulty in later parts of this game, and it really comes down to learning how to avoid them instead of actually battling each one. Thankfully, after the kind of gauntlet of Mousers, we do get a wonderful pizza. As we reach the end here, we're going to have a couple of buckets come down, very easy to avoid, before finally a foot soldier comes out. Taking him out will allow us then to go into the opposite elevator door and go to the next part. What would a beat-em-up game be without an elevator segment? Nothing you can do about throwing guys off of it, which is always my favorite thing to do in these style of levels, but thankfully it's a simple one hit for all these foot soldiers and actually pretty easy overall. Though later, we do actually have to battle a boss on one of these. Eventually, the foot soldiers will stop coming here and we'll complete this elevator segment, moving on to the next part of level 3. Konami always did a great job with their soundtracks, and the Game Boy ones in particular I always enjoy for the most part. This one is definitely a noted example of one of those Game Boy soundtracks I enjoyed listening to. Now begins the gauntlet of Mousers. These things do not stop, so the best way to deal with them is jump up and try to get away from them, or transfer to a lower platform if that is available as well. Thankfully, along the top here, since there's 2 Mousers below me in that container, not that many more can spawn. I think it's only 4 of the Mousers can really show up at once, which is a lot. So for this next segment, we just quickly keep moving left and right, and our goal is to get up and get into this chamber. Move over to the right a bit until another Mouser starts showing up from behind you, and then make your way to the platform above. A lot of times it comes down to just switching at the right moments to avoid as many of the Mousers as possible. At the end of the segment here, do not jump, just fall straight down. If you jump, you're going to end up getting hit by a Mouser and potentially just get ganged up on when you do land. Once you do land though, safely jump right back up to that and try to make your way over to the right side. Like I said, alternating between the platforms that you're on is essential for trying to avoid as many of these enemies as you can. Thankfully, dropping down here, even with dealing with a lot of Mousers, we do get a pizza at least. Just force your way through to the right side. Eventually, you'll be able to come to another one of these hanging spots so that we can grab a hold of it and then bring our way up to the top part. Just walk a little bit so that you can then swing your way down and take this path over a lot so you can avoid all the Mousers on the ground level. Do what we did before, fall straight down, do not jump or you're just going to end up getting attacked, and then immediately jump back up so you can get up to safety, and then into here for a little bit more safety. If you have plenty of Mousers on the bottom part, just keep them alive, let them go on the bottom, and that way you can safely move on the top part without any more coming your way. Thankfully, there is a bit of invincibility frames when you do go between the different levels, and that's what's essential for helping you escape danger. Here we're doing more of what we've been doing, moving back and forth, just up and above, trying to avoid it. If you do a jump up into this upper segment, you can thankfully get another pizza. So even though we're being attacked constantly, there is some health replenishments. Knowing where they are will really help you out. Thankfully though, that is the end of that segment, but we're not done with this level quite yet. Over here to the right side, we're going to have some bombs being dropped, and then Krang makes his appearance for the boss encounter. For Krang, you want to avoid the missiles. Those are easy enough. The fireballs that he fires out, you want to kind of jump over and deliver a jumping kick of your own. He will then kind of fly above. When he does this, he'll come crashing down, and as he does that, you want to make sure that you avoid and do a jumping kick of your own. By doing the full-blown jump kick, he'll rush either the left or right side depending upon where he's going, and this way you'll avoid taking damage from that rush. It's really difficult to get through this fight on hard mode without taking at least some damage because of so much going on, so whatever you can avoid by doing the jump kick at the right time and getting between the missiles will really help you out, and hopefully you'll be able to get some more of that health back in the bonus game. After getting some of the health back, almost all of it, we now will be moving on to Act 4 and Leonardo this time around. I do like the Act cards. They're of course very similar to the ones that were used for the cartoon series, and even like the Paul Screen bonus game ones as well were the ones they used, so just cool little nods to those who of course love the cartoon series. At the beginning of the next level, we're going to be attacked by giant boulders from behind, either rolling that we can jump over, or big ones that are bouncing, in which case you can go underneath of them. Just kind of wait for them to bounce once, and then do a slide backwards, and you should be able to go underneath of them. There is quite a lot of rocks that you will be dodging, but just keep persevering and moving over to the right, and eventually you'll come to a little bit of a hill. Fun little animation of the turtle's head kind of going off as you're going down the hill, but then you're going to be moving pretty quickly down, and you want to make sure you time your jump so you can just easily get over those boulders that are chasing you as you run down this big slope. Thankfully, eventually you'll come to the end. We're going to do a big launch at that so that we can get over here, and then the next segment introduces these giant fire towers. There's not really pits or anything below, so if you're getting hit, thankfully, it's not like you're going to instantly die or anything, but you do get slowed down by each one. Here, if you drop down, you can get a pizza, so no matter what damage you've taken from the rocks or the fires already, you can at least get that back. I always like to see if I can get over the fire tower, since it is a pretty high jump you have, and a lot of the towers don't quite go up enough, so you can jump over a few. The bazooka firing enemies are a bit annoying. You actually can destroy their fire, so timing a nicely done jump kick or attack can be very helpful. Here, wait for the fire to dissipate a bit and then walk between the towers so that you can make it safely. That's immediately followed up, of course, with some more pits and these fire towers coming up. Nothing too exciting here. Quickly take out the bazooka guy. He'll more than likely take at least one hit, or if lucky, you'll be able to jump over that hit to deal with him. As soon as the next segment begins, the wonderful Mousers make their return, attacking you in droves from the left side. Try to just avoid them as best as you can. You're going to probably take a hit or two, but just keep moving forward. You can wait for Mousers to kind of jump over you in this tunnel before you attempt to go through it yourself. The next tunnel, though, the opening, will have a pizza monster to deal with. The pizza monster is a bit of a troublesome spot just because of the distance it ends up attacking, but what you want to do is time your jump attack so that you're popping out of the water with your kick at the same time it's about to come out as well. It's always coming up in the same intervals and at the same spots each time, so it's easy to know where this pizza monster is about to emerge from. If you time it right where your jump is just at the same time or right after it, you'll be able to keep delivering attacks to him since he pops out of the water so fast, and his claw attack will miss you each time. After a few rounds of this, you defeat that pizza monster and you're moving on to the next part of the level, which is pretty annoying as you're being massively attacked by more Mousers, this time with little holes though, so a lot of the time I just like to keep doing short jumps and kicking on my way down if necessary to hope for the best, but you just want to keep moving through that area as quick as you can so they don't slow you down too much. Here we can see one of those tunnel capsules out, and Shredder makes an appearance. For this fight, Shredder will fire out a big kind of blade-like wave attack that will go across the screen, very easy to dodge, as well as Shredder likes to kind of go up into the air for a flying kick towards you. The flying kick can be difficult to dodge, so just kind of let it hit you and immediately follow up with an attack from his back, and that way you can then also attack him by the time he gets to the left or right side. The invincibility should wear off so that you're able to deliver another blow. After the battle, we chase down Shredder, who is rescued, and we know we'll have to be dealing with Shredder again in just a bit, but then we get another bonus game before moving on to Act 5. Another different type of bonus game, more pizza collecting, and as we've gotten used to the construction level using these to get away from those Mousers, you should be an expert being able to then gather the pizzas during this bonus game. Since we played as all of the turtles already, and I want to complete the game using my favorite turtle, Raphael, I'm going to pick Donatello for level number 5. I love the beginning here of us coming off of the blimp, Splinter there as well. This level is a pretty big mess, and there's a lot of different platforms, these floating ones that we're going to be taking all throughout. Similar to that construction level, a lot of them you're able to grab the underside of and flip up. You can also just shimmy across them, sometimes getting away from some enemies. As long as you're going to the right side, you're making progress, so whichever path you end up finding easiest for you, I would say go ahead and take it. I like to switch a lot or fairly often just to kind of throw the enemies spawning off and get away from most of their attacks. Throughout the area, you do also have some bombs being dropped on top of you. As long as you don't jump up into them, a lot of them are coming down so slowly, you can just run underneath of them. A few of the platforms do have cannons on them that fire out in that 3-shot spread shot, but very easy also to get in between those bullets. Climbing up a fair amount here, you will eventually come to a pizza soldier there, so you can at least replenish the health you've lost during this kind of chaotic scene so far. It's kind of even hard to tell if you're making progress in this level since it feels identical each segment after one another, but trust me, thankfully it's not a maze and you can just keep barreling over to that right side to make it through the segment eventually. Thankfully though, this segment isn't nearly as challenging as the previous level on the hard difficulty because at least you don't have the endless amount of Mousers and there's a lot of open space for you to escape them, even if you are being tracked down by a few of the enemies. This segment does feel like it goes on forever, and right after this we actually do have a boss encounter. It's not the boss of the stage, it's kind of a mini boss encounter, but eventually the screen stops, and going through here we initiate the little cutscene of us falling down from this armada of platforms and going into the boss encounter, this time against Baxter Stockman. Use a jump and kick to Baxter, and you can use the building here in the center to also attack Baxter while in the air if necessary. Drop down on the building after you attack, that way you can avoid most of the projectiles. Very easy fight and not really much of anything, and after defeating we go inside to deal with more enemies in this big building. What you need to do is in these rooms just defeat the enemies and you'll be able to move on to the next room. Thankfully in the second room here we're able to gather a nice pizza before then going into the next room, which leads to the boss encounter against the Stone Warrior, or Granitor the Stone Warrior. Granitor likes to roll around in his ball form and then eventually popping out to fire out several shots using the flamethrower. Avoid him as he's rolling around, you won't be able to damage, But doing these jump kicks while holding up or down to kind of go through him while attacking, you avoid most of the firepower from that flamethrower. You just have to time it right so that his invincibility frames aren't still going when you do the next attack, and even if the flamethrower hits you, it's only going to do that one bit of damage and you're able to keep going on. After draining his health, he kind of escapes, and we're moving on to the next level of the game. And one last variation of the pizza collecting bonus game, you have the ledge above, but this time you're not going to be able to hang on it. You just jump up and down between the parts of the sewer and gather those pizzas up. It's now time for the final level of the game. I'm going to go to my favorite turtle, Raphael, for Act 6. As we begin Act 6 here, we're starting off with a wonderful surfing segment. Stay wherever you prefer and just have to time your jumps over the various missiles flying in from the right side, as well as the wonderful spiky mine-like things that are in the water. Thankfully, it moves relatively slowly, and you have that nice floaty jump with the turtles, so you can avoid at least most of the fire and stuff coming your way. Alternating, kind of going up and down sometimes between the missiles can help you out, and if there's too many things on screen, a few of them just kind of pop in out of nowhere. It's just some of the limitations that you have to deal with, so keeping in the air with your jumps really helps you at least avoid some of these mines. After that segment, thankfully though, we just immediately pop off of our surfboard, and now we're going through the tunnel as we're making our way to the Technodrome. At the beginning part here, you have like fireballs coming at you from the right side, as well as the foot soldiers doing the slide moves. So just do jumps and try to get in between the fireballs as you make your way to the right. Some of which you can actually just slide straight under if they aren't too low to the ground. Right after that, you have some open pits with those Mausers popping out. Take out whichever ones you can or feel like, but for the most part just keep moving forward and use some nicely timed jumps to avoid at least a few of them. Thankfully, after that segment, as to be expected at this point, you do thankfully get a pizza before jumping into the Technodrome. As it begins, you have a conveyor belt that we get to start off, and we're immediately attacked by General Krang. He moves and rolls back and forth on the conveyor belt, eventually stopping and firing out 3 bullets in a row, walking a little bit, and then repeating the process of firing those same 3 bullets. When he does the roll, you're able to easily jump over that, then immediately go into another big jump, so at least you can kind of be in the air for his first set of bullets. It's not too tricky of a fight. It's honestly a little bit plain compared to some of the other battles we've dealt with at this point, but just keep on focusing on those attacks. You can kind of get behind him sometimes, or even if he's marching forward with the bullets, he's just firing at nothing. Eventually, you'll be able to drain his health bar and move on to the next segment of this level, and trust me, we still have quite a little bit to go here. It can be a little bit tricky to time it, but just kind of wait for the bullets to go up, and after that kind of final top bullet, you should have a little bit of a gap between the next firing one so that you can jump up and take out the turret, which I highly recommend doing. Right after that, some Roadkill Rodneys make an appearance, their first appearance in this game, but I'm just going to keep moving forward. They don't really come out at you with a bunch at once, and they do take several hits, but if you keep moving, for the most part, you'll just outrun them and they'll go off screen. Unlike inside the tunnel that we were dealing with earlier with the bazooka guys, you want to wait for these towers to kind of dissipate, and then time the jump in between the different missiles, and after the tower goes down, to try to deliver a hit to that bazooka guy with a jump kick before proceeding on. We want to try to maintain some of our health if possible. Thankfully, right after those fire towers and bazooka guys, we do make it to a door to the next segment here, and it's one of those elevator segments, similar to the one we dealt with before, battling foot soldiers is kind of coming at us in droves. This segment, just like before, really isn't too tricky. Staying around like the middle part of the screen gives you plenty of time to get away from any of the foot soldiers coming on, as well as not too much space to cover in order to get in close to them to deliver the attacks. Eventually though, the segment will come to an end and we move on to the next part here of the Technodrome. In this little segment we get a little cutscene with Krang kind of forcing us downwards and go into that next part. Here, all the skills that we've been using to avoid those Mousers early on are put to the test, as we just have to quickly kind of maneuver our way through these areas with the onslaught of Mousers popping out of these openings. I find the slide kick can actually be a little bit helpful here as far as avoiding some of the Mousers. Now, right after that segment, it's time for another elevator part, but instead of battling foot soldiers, it's time for Super Shredder. For this fight, Super Shredder will slowly walk towards you and try to attack you using his sword. Thankfully, you can do short little jumps in order to avoid most of the attacks, and thankfully you have a lot of space. Being able to go up and down on the elevator gives you that extra little bit of space needed to avoid some of the attacks that Super Shredder is going to be putting out. This isn't the final boss of the game though, but thankfully the final boss is actually easier than this battle, so if you survive this, you should be able to survive the fight against Krang at the end. Before we make it though to that final showdown against Krang, we have plenty of more foot soldiers that are going to at least do one last hurrah of trying to stop us. Doing jump kicks or waiting for them to kind of come down at you is a nice way to deal with the flying enemies during this segment. There isn't an onslaught of constantly coming at you enemies, so you can take your time a little bit in trying to keep that health up if you can. Unfortunately, unlike every other area of the game that seemingly would give you pizzas right when you absolutely needed it before boss encounters or after troublesome segments, they decided not to do that here for this kind of final segment here. So thankfully though, we can kind of take our time a bit. Eventually you see kind of the flashing in the background with the bullets coming along the ground. Just be sure to jump over it to avoid that fire. Eventually though, we do come to the end and it's time for the final showdown against Krang. Now for Krang will cause the ground to shake using the stomp move. Thankfully, jumping up in the air will avoid being shook when the ground ends up being shaken. So this allows you to just keep getting into the air and delivering attacks to Krang. Just stay far enough away. Krang will not jump all the way to the left side of the screen. There's always going to be that little bit of space. And even though he is massive, it just makes him a very easy target to keep delivering your kick attacks to him every time his invincibility frames go away. Compared to some of the other bosses in the game, it's actually pretty easy, and we get to sit back and enjoy the ending, the TMNT 2, Back from the Sewer on Nintendo Gameboy. And yep, that's it. Unfortunately, a little bit of an anticlimactic ending, just seeing kind of the Technodrome go away, and then at least you get the cast, as we see a picture of the turtles here, and you can see all the enemy names listed, bosses, and the like, so that's always fun. But it would have been nice to, of course, include it, that roll call, actually getting to see the enemies and such being named. Either way though, it's a very fun game, one that and I'm sure many of you remember quite fondly. Third TMNT game did change up the formula quite a bit compared to the first two on Game Boy, and one that I will be getting to down the road for sure. After the credits finish up, we get one last little screen here with results to showing your score, and if you beat the top score, which if you beat the game, you more than likely did, with one last shot here of the copyright with Konami and a pizza being thrown towards us. Fun little animation before the end screen, and it then resets and we can play the game all over again. But with that, it's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.